Bonjour à tous, je voulais dire quand même en français. C'est l'ouverture de l'exposition Always Working in Progress, qui est accompagnée par une série de conférences liées aux projets qui sont en cours. Et l'invité de ce soir, c'est Beniamino de Liguori Carino, qui est neveu de Adriano Olivetti et secrétaire général, si je dis bien, monsieur,
ouais.
De la Fondation Olivetti et des éditions di Comunità, maison d'édition qui était fondée par Adriano Olivetti. Il est avec nous ce soir parce que on est en train de faire un livre, une traduction en français d'une sélection de textes de Adriano Olivetti, et ça serait la première fois que ces textes sont traduits en français. Donc, je laisse la parole à Monsieur de Liguori Carino qui va faire une présentation en anglais. Ok.
Yeah. Okay.
Prego.
Well,
Grazie.
Thank you very much. As my French is very limited, I will run this presentation in English. And in the first place, I would like to thank you for having invited me today. And I would also like to thank you in advance for your attention in the for a few minutes. As said, my name is Beniamino de Liguori. I chair the Adriano Olivetti Foundation in Rome. The title given to this presentation, I guess, pinpoints one of the most topical and above all, like fascinating, like characters of the story we may refer to as Olivettism. And it also, Coding a Legacy, pinpoints a facet of our foundation and its activities and commitment in representing since 1962 one of the most interesting and significant, at least to us, entrepreneurial, social, and cultural ventures of the 20th century, which is the Olivetti, of course, adventure. And as we have limited time to tackle a very wide topic, such the Olivetti legacy, today I decided to provide you like a so-called introduction to the Olivetti world, to the Olivetti universe, like a brief overview, placing specific focus on links which bound together the Olivetti entrepreneurship experience as a whole of historical facts and theoretical proposal with some of the most intriguing challenges we are nowadays facing not only in economics, but as a whole society. And I will also briefly revoke some key points with the help of a few images and quotes that can provide a frame around the Olivetti legacy, a legacy to start that contains the nexus between material progress, technical efficiency, ethical responsibility, and of course, like beauty. And hopefully, like this frame I will provide you with will serve later to better understand also, like, and we are very happy with that, like the aim to having like the Olivetti's essays translated also in French. So for the benefit of those who may not know what we're talking about, Olivetti is one of the most important company of the 20th century in mechanics, mostly, and from the beginning of the 50s in electronics. The first Italian multinational company, very few or known for decades competitors worldwide in its core business, which was typewriters, calculating machines, office furnitures. The only competitor, as we will see it like in my presentation, is the IBM in developing the electronic industry. The Olivetti company was founded by Camillo Olivetti at the beginning of the 20th century in Ivrea, a small town between Turin and Milan. And then later the company was led to international success by son Adriano Olivetti, like our main star of this talk, from the 30s up to the 60s. He died tragically and unexpectedly at 59 years old in 1960. So what comes later is a small, what comes like later, like in the 70s and the 80s, it's a small, like, has a small interest in my talk. So what is the, I wrote the Olivetti idiom, what is the Olivetti idiom and what's the legacy and how may we define it? And most importantly, why it is so meaningful? Why do we see an increasingly interest, I have to say on international basis, in studying, deepening, or simply contribute to the revival of the Olivetti history? And, and in other words, at least like this is my view, my words, should we be looking at this legacy? Should we be looking to the achievements of Olivetti as an antique dealer, marvels, a beautiful piece merely as a dusty symbol of the past? Or instead, shall we be looking at Olivetti as well as an intangible yet very concrete chance for a change, as a real deal breaker in terms of setting the ends for our social and economic models? The big and still unanswered question that Adriano Olivetti asked himself more than 50 years ago is not far from like the question, to sum it up, that our time seems so often to ask to all of us, which in Olivetti on words is how can we be technically and materially advanced without being internally and ethically spoiled? And to tackle like the matter, there are two words that are key to answer to this question, and above all to understand and get acquaintance with Adriano Olivetti. The first word is responsibility, and the second word is community. And I would like to start. By reading the words spoken by Adriano Olivetti during the inauguration of the new Olivetti plant in Pozzuoli near Naples in 1955. And these words seem to encapsulate the deepest sense of what I would like to discuss here with you today. Can industry set aims for itself? Are these simply in the indexes of profit? And beyond its obvious rhythms, isn't there something more fascinating, a destination, a vocation, even in the life of factories? We do believe in spiritual values: love, truth, justice, beauty. Whoever forgets even one of these values cannot lead anyone on the path of civilization. It could be helpful to add that the Pozzuoli factory in the mid-50s was probably one of the most advanced industrial plants in Europe and possibly beyond Europe at the time. And by opening that plant, Olivetti also set at the time a best practice for the years to come, which was basically the attempt to bring wealth and work to southern Italy instead of dragging northwards the workforce from the south, which is still a very big issue in nowadays Italy. But this, of course, it's another story. So as I said, the second word is comunità, community. And this that you are seeing was drawn by Adriano Olivetti, and it symbolizes his idea of a territorial community for the area surrounding Turin. And it was made in 1958, which is the same year when Olivetti as a company acquired its American competitor, the Underwood Company. In other words, we can say that during the highest phase of industrial expansion, there was like a deep understanding of the necessity to remain deeply connected and rooted to the original surroundings with one's own community, like, let's say, maintaining a local scale. And linked to this notion of local, like linked to the notion of roots, there is a photograph portraying the Olivetti family in the early 20s. Camillo Olivetti, the founder, and his family during like an holiday in the mountain of Valle d'Aosta. And Adriano Olivetti is the man with the tousled hair behind Camillo. Camillo, at the beginning of the 20th century, bought like an abandoned convent in Ivrea. And this is another picture of them. They look like more like pioneers, like American pioneers. And inside this abandoned convent, there is these frescoes, which are very, very important. Like, they're considered to be the best, like the most important frescoes of North Italy of the 15th century. And it is said that Adriano and his brothers and sisters often went to play right inside the convent, this chapel, precisely where these frescoes are conserved to this day, and frescoes that depict quite frightening Judgment Day scenes. And Camillo Olivetti had covered the frescoes with piles of hay, not only to best preserve them, but also like that his children would maintain their secular upbringing. And Adriano's sister Silvia recounted the times during their playtime when a bundle of hay would like come tumbling down, and the children would secretly like stare at these frightening images depicting damned souls and illustrating the eternal battle, to me, between forces of good and evil. And definitely like the internalization of such powerful images impacted the young Adriano Olivetti. And ever since then, the Olivetti production facilities and social services buildings sprang up around this former convent. And to me, it's a wonderful metaphor of the cross-pollination between spirituality and technology that has provided us with a landscape kept like almost intact, at least until recently, as well as with extraordinary products of human activity in harmony with nature. And recently, like, I stumbled into like this amazing work by Diego Rivera in the River Rouge Ford factory in Detroit. And it's very weird, like I'm still trying to kind of like giving a substance to this thought, but it's weird because in 1932, the son of the founder of Henry Ford asked Diego Rivera to paint like the frescoes in Detroit as well. And the 1932 is the very same year, we will see it now, when Adriano Olivetti started like his career as a manager at the Olivetti company. So there is like an ocean in between, but there is something like in Diego Rivera work that almost like 500 years like later than Gianmartino Spanzotti, the painter of the chapel in Ivrea, that they are like somehow linked together. But however, like I'm still working on it. Camillo Olivetti in this picture is again like at the middle, like seated in the middle of this picture, and the photo was taken inside the first Olivetti factory built by Camillo himself in 1908. And shortly after this photo was shot, Camillo leaves the factory in the hands, as said, 1932, of his son Adriano, with only one imperative: Adriano, you can use whichever means you see fit in the introduction of new methods, but never fire anyone, because the involuntary unemployment is the worst disgrace that can befall a human being. So, and I believe that here lies somehow the point. It lies in the next photograph as well, portraying Adriano Olivetti almost 20 years later, like in the mid 50s, like two men speaking, at least like this is what I see, two men speaking as men and not as owner and worker, although they are committed obviously in different roles. And this photo was shot in Via Gerdis along the factory production lines. I will come here later, but just to give you like at glance, like an idea of what I'm talking about. And if we look at Via Gerdis, again, at bird eye from above, we can note that the factory production lines grew proportional on the left side of the street, grew proportionally alongside the buildings dedicated to social services, designated for factory workers on the right side of the Via Gerdis. So in other words, as the factory grew on one side of the street, as did social services and activities on the other side. So, and anyway, the one and only filmed interview we have with Adriano Olivetti took place in this building, and the interview was carried out in December 1960 by the national broadcast RAI, a few weeks before Adriano Olivetti's sudden death on a train to Lausanne in Switzerland on, as said, February 27, 1960. And it is well known that Olivetti loved to stroll around the factory on Saturdays and Sundays when it was at a standstill, as Olivetti was the first Italian company to give employees Saturday off. And the interviewer in that occasion asked Olivetti if it was true what was said around the town, that he visited the factory from on Saturdays and Sundays. And Olivetti replied that yes, it was true, because he says, when the factory is shut and the machines are silent, the issue of the relationship between modern times and human beings emerged in all its urgency. And shortly after they got out into Via Gerdis again, and when asked what architecture was later during the same interview, Olivetti replied, architecture is the way a society expresses itself. Architecture is what defines a society. And at the time, Adriano Olivetti was chairing the National Institute of Urban Planning in Italy. So as architecture is what defines a society, let's quickly consider this society or part of this society as Olivetti had imagined it. So we have the products, of course. I just made a selection of the most iconic ones. Lettera 22, the Olivetti Valentine, designed by Ettore Sozzas, the Divi Summa, designed by Mario Bellini, and then of course we have like the corporate like image, and I've just like again here like picked up like a few commercials that were like very innovative at the time, all made by the youngest. And we were here at the Olivetti showroom on the 5th Avenue in New York, designed by BBPR, Banfi, Belzoglioso, Peressutti, and Rogers, with this like amazing sand cast by the Sardinian like artist Costantino Nivola. And this is a very iconic picture because they decided to put on the sidewalk on 5th Avenue, outside the shop, outside the showroom, these totem with a Lettera 22, a machine like a typewriter machine installed over here, so that like all the walkers can like just stop by and try it. And those are other images. This is actually the Paris showroom designed by Olivetti. And here, like, we go again. This is San Francisco, and this is perhaps like the most beautiful showroom ever made by Carlo Scarpa in Venice. Still, like, it's the only one that you can still visit now. Like, it's in Piazza San Marco in Venice. So as said, we have like products, corporate image, showrooms, and of course, like production facilities. Those are in Ivrea. Nowadays, this is like current pictures. These, yeah, you can see this is the back, like the back part of the main production line, and you can see the San Bernardino convent I was talking about at the beginning, like there at on the right side of the image. Of course, there was like research, like from this building at the end of the 50s, like the first calculating, like electronic calculating machine came out. And again, this was designed by Ettore Sozzas. And I'm just going quite quickly through here. This is the Olivetti building in Pozzuoli. I read the quote by Adriano Olivetti on the April 55 at the beginning of the presentation. And these are like the external part of the factory in Pozzuoli. And of course, like we have social services, as I said, this is the cafeteria in Ivrea. And we also have kindergartens and employee housing. These were made in the beginning of the 30s by Figini e Pollini. This was my Marcello Nizzoli. Just going through here, we have social services again. So like libraries. This was a reportage by Ricard Bresson at the end of the 50s of the social services in Ivrea, of Olivetti's social services. Publishing, of course. And I decided to end like this quick overview on these images with the photo of the kindergarten, because in Ivrea by Luigi Figini and Gino Pollini of the 1939, because in my opinion it shows the key points of the Olivetti ecosystem. Because on one hand, maybe it's quite rhetoric, but like on one hand we have education, we have culture, the need to teach beauty and justice, and on the other hand, like exemplified and embodied by the tree in the center, we have the relationship between tradition and innovation, and the drive to design centered around the roots of humanity, which of course lie in nature. And going back to the questions I've made at the beginning. So what is the point of talking, of publishing Olivetti today? So what is the point of looking to these images? Again, what is the point of I would say, like, how can we use the tools of modernity as an opportunity for freedom and not as a new instrument of power? And again, how can we, quoting Adriano Olivetti, how can we advance technically without devolving internally? And let's take as an example this machine. This is the Elea 9003, designed by Ettore Sozzas, the first electronic calculator run by Modern Components. And it was launched by Olivetti in 1959. As we can see, it occupied literally an entire room, and it is evident that it no longer has a place in our contemporary world. However, like the words, again, with which Adriano Olivetti explained at the time the reasoning behind technological research done by Olivetti, are somehow these words are still like very useful and maybe timeless. He said in 1959, this machine was crafted by man to serve man, to free him from the ancestral toil of labor. We must commit to a vaster moral and material front. And 6 years later, 1965, the same idea of technology produced the P101, Programma 101, widely considered to be the first personal computer in the world. I just like wrote on the side of the picture an account like of the newspapers at the time in the United States. So desktop size computer is being sold by Olivetti. Olivetti presents computers in typewriter size. Olivetti reduce computer size. As its inventor Pier Giorgio Perotto stated at the time, the machine did not require an expert in a white lab coat to make it function, but it was used. The Programma 101, this machine, was used by the NASA for the 1969 moon landing. They bought like 7 machines, tangibly demonstrating that looking at people's like inner needs, maybe it's quite rhetoric to say that, but that looking at people's inner needs in projecting is what allows humanity to reach beyond its limit. So what meaning holds together all these images I've shown you, and as well as very briefly retracted part of Olivetti history? I hope that these few images have shown what, according to Olivetti, really means to be avant-garde. And in my opinion, alongside all the avant-garde examples that we could use, so products, as said, architecture, commercial policies, and so on, the one which is most hidden at first glance, yet instead most truly represents the Olivetti idiom, is the 9-month maternity leave with full pay that Adriano Olivetti guaranteed to all female workers starting from 1945, and he explained that with these words: we express our solidarity so that no worker who is also a mother may look with envy and pain at those mothers who have the luck and the right to enjoy the first months of their baby's lives at home. In the words of Massimo Fichera, who was like a close collaborator of Adriano Olivetti, the factory, according to Adriano Olivetti, was not only a producer of goods, but the factory was a producer of good. And in this precise identity between thought and action, between, I would say, goods and good, that we can trace ground to the answer to what is an Olivetti idiom. And before considering the shape, even before considering any aesthetics and beauty, the Olivetti idiom, the Olivetti legacy, is an idea of a community where it's still possible to recognize one another as people first and foremost. And this identity is also the reason for UNESCO recognizing Ivrea, was a project of our foundation, as a World Heritage Site in 2018, which was a unique and unprecedented move. So Olivetti legacy is a cult of independence. It's the imagination of the future as a free space where to experiment, where all the most modern tools are to create a world that is materially more fascinating, but also spiritually, in Olivetti's word, more elevating. Again, in Adriano Olivetti words, a place where beauty and tolerance are names and not vacant words. In short, I would say that Olivetti means a self-acknowledged community of human beings, in addition to an industrial and cultural history worth studying and rediscovering today. Because I think that ultimately are commonplace ambitions that really give life to authentic values and everlasting accounts of history that merit that it's worth being told. And at this regard, I think it's very inspiring, a quote of the Russian poet Joseph Brodsky, who once said that beauty cannot be programmed, as beauty is always the unpredicted result of very normal intention. And I would like to like going to the end and conclude perhaps with this photo of Adriano Olivetti. So because it's very symbolic to me, because over the last half century, all facets of Adriano Olivetti's memory as a theorist, as a politician, entrepreneur, urban planner, have been subjected to a tremendous and I would say enormous and truly unbelievable process of collective suppression. And more than anything else, the suppression of his entrepreneurial exploit reveals the depth of this phenomenon. Because in fact, Olivetti was primarily a great entrepreneur, probably one of the greatest of the 20th century, and not just in Italy. And this is, of course, like, it's not the occasion to analyze the causes and the context of this phenomenon, but I think it's just to say that Olivetti is finally and belatedly taking his place in the Italian popular culture. And this is partly due, I may say, to the substantial hard work of the institution I represent, and partially because the Olivetti history is in some ways one example of what Italy, but not just Italy, could have become, but did not. In a way, it's like there is a time that may return, like a time that is waiting for the right moment to reveal its best side, a time that is waiting for another time to fully come to fruition. Again, indeed, like as Paul Valéry said, it takes two geniuses to create an idea, one to conceive it and the other one to recognize it. And therefore, and really to conclude, the values Olivetti embodies are timeless. And this is the reason why there is a multitude of people of all ages that today see in Olivetti, especially in Adriano Olivetti, an example for an authentic progress and like a true a new model. A multitude, a community that are capable to find in Olivetti an answer to timeless questions for mankind, such as how to give eventually birth to a more fair and decent society where to grow our children. And this is the reason why at the end we can say that somehow the Olivetti legacy is not a formula or a matter that involves a practical answer, as the Olivetti legacy is whoever like ask himself the very same questions Adriano Olivetti did like 50, 60 years ago. And to us, such legacy truly comes to life in the following words that were used again by Adriano Olivetti to describe the bell, which was the logo that since 1962 represent our foundation. No one should hesitate to ring our bell. It rings for a free word, more palpably fascinating and more spiritually elevating. It rings for the best part of ourselves, and it echoes every time. Justice is up against violence. The weak are up against the mighty. Intelligence is up against power, and bravery is up against defeat. Poverty is up against egotism. Knowledge is up against improvisation. Truth is up against error, and love is up against indifference. So this was really like a brief account and overview on the Olivetti history, on the Olivetti legacy. And I have to thank again you for inviting me today. And above all, like, we are really happy to have a few of the Adriano Olivetti's essays translated in French in hopefully like the next month. I think it's very meaningful. It's very meaningful to have this acknowledgement from another, like, also like country as France, to the importance of this personality for our time, no matters like the time that has like passed since, sorry, like the world's fight since he passed away. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you very much. It was very inspiring to hear you. And maybe there are some questions online, but Michela, first of all, Michela Maguolo, architect, she's following this publication with me. And maybe she has something to say. She's been studying Olivetti's work since years. So yeah, maybe you have something already.
I have one question, not something to say, but one question. So if an industry must or can have a name, which was the aim of Edizioni di Comunità? Why Adriano believed so much in publication? It was his first activity. Well, it was parallel to architecture actually, but why was it so important, and why now you are reprising the Edizioni di Comunità, which is your own aim?
Yeah, well, hard to say like my own aim, as I managed to, Edizioni di Comunità was founded in 1946 by Adriano, and then after his death, like, they were like the publishing house was run by his son Roberto, but then in the mid 70s, Edizioni di Comunità were acquired by Mondadori Group, like the biggest at the time, at least, like the biggest like publishing company in Italy, and we managed to get back the sigla editoriale. I don't know how to translate that. It's like really like the name, just the name, not the catalog. And the aim at the time, so I would say like 10 years ago, was to in 2011, yeah, was to sort of test. I mean, at least to me, was to we started by publishing the Adriano Olivetti's like work, and to me, like, was like a test to see whether like the market and whether like the general public would have, you know, like acknowledge Adriano Olivetti as a true voice of contemporary world, and not just like some kind of like, you know, like some kind of like weird like element of the past, dusted and basically voiceless. So that was the aim at the beginning, just like really like to publish 3 or 4 books. Like after 10 years, we have now like more than 100 titles in our catalog. And so we try to gather together like other authors and titles from Adriano Olivetti's time, with the assumption that if Adriano Olivetti is still so contemporary, perhaps many of the choices he made at the time as a publisher are worth to be, you know, like rediscovered. Why was that important to him? Definitely because through Edizioni, like through the tool of the publishing house, Adriano managed to introduce in like post-war Italy the most significant and vibrating instrument coming from United States, France, Northern Europe. In Italy at the time, there was like a really like the culture was kind of dominated by, you know, like from, maybe not just in Italy, like from, like on one hand, you had the idealistic world, and on the other hand, you had the Marxism. And there was a third so-called third way, and Adriano Olivetti perhaps really embodied like that third way also by publishing, I don't know, Simone Weil, Kierkegaard, Richard Neutra. Like it was really a tool that simultaneously served his idea, like his own technical needs, was like a really like was a tool, like toolbox for the community project. And on the other hand, like it was just, you know, like that I don't know, like that the taste of new discoveries. And this, I think, why was that important? It was really like also like very free. This is an example I use like often. Adriano hired as a director of the company libraries in Ivrea at the beginning of the 50s, Ugo Fedeli. Ugo Fedeli was one of the most prominent like anarchists in Europe at the time. And it was basically like he had been like prosecuted like all over Europe before the war and right afterwards. And then like suddenly like he found in Ivrea like a free space where he could like gather like this amazing company library, like a space of freedom where he could, you know, work for like more than 5 years, I guess. I think he was then before that he was exiled in Paris, and then somehow he arrived in Ivrea, and Adriano hired him in as a director of the library services of Ivrea. So also I think that applies to Edizioni di Comunità as well. So it was really like and it's Edizioni di Comunità. It's really one of the most important publishing house in Italy right after like in post-war Italy for architecture, urban planning, and was really like a toolbox for him.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much again for your time and
Thank you for the invitation and for your work, because it's really.
Thank you.